Welcome to Asphalt Talk, a podcast by and for asphalt professionals. Join our expert hosts as they tackle real industry issues to pave a smoother way for asphalt suppliers and producers. This podcast is sponsored by MAPA, the Missouri Asphalt Pavement Association. Founded to promote quality and accountability, MAPA has been serving the asphalt producers of Missouri since 1990.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Asphalt Talk. I'm your host, Rick Bierman with the Missouri Asphalt Pavement Association. Today is a special day as I'm hosting the podcast for the first time, and I'm joined by Stacy Brockmeyer with May Create, who just so happens to be producing this wonderful podcast. Stacy currently serves as the chairperson for our Emerging Leaders Committee at MAPA. Sitting down with Stacy and I today is Shara, Brice with the Chapman Foundation for Caring Communities as we discuss this unique training opportunity the MAPA Emerging Leaders will be presenting at the upcoming Black to Basics Spring Training on February 22nd and 23rd. Ladies, thanks for joining me today. Stacy, why don't you start us off by telling everyone what the Emerging Leaders do as a MAPA committee and why we're excited to be offering this DISC training.
Thanks so much, Rick. So the main goal for the MAPA Emerging Leaders is to promote the asphalt industry as well as providing educational opportunities and networking for our members. This year, we are super excited to add a professional development track to spring training. So Black to Basics Spring Training is a really long-standing event for MAPA, and we've never had a professional development track quite like this. So that's super exciting. So this year we will be partnering with the Chapman Foundation for Caring Communities, and they will be presenting on the DISC profile. And I know we're all in the asphalt industry, and so sometimes communication profiles might sound a little bit silly, but I swear to you, I have been through DISC so many times and I learn so much every single time. So I'm really encourage everyone to just attend this and really get as much out of it as you can. So really for leaders, sales, operations, foremen, customer service, this training's great for you and your team. So Shara, tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, and your company.
Thank you so much, Stacy and Rick. I'm so happy to be here. I'm the Senior Director for Partnerships and Regional Learning at the Chapman Foundation for Caring Communities. And we have the privilege of getting to work with nonprofits, local governments, military, healthcare, educators to help them have some tools to do more efficiently the important work that they're already doing. We're so excited to get to work with the MAPA Emerging Leaders, and particularly to get to do this work in Missouri. Our headquarter organization, Barry Waymiller, is based in Clayton. They have 12,000 team members all over the world. Their CEO, Bob Chapman, is rated the #3 CEO in the world, and they have a $3 billion global industry. But what really sets this company apart is they want to measure their success by the way they impact the lives of their people. And so to do this, they developed a training course, a 3-day training course, and Extended DISC is part of that. And so, what I'm really excited about is that the MAPA leadership says, let's make a difference and let's incorporate part of this into our professional development. So this year, we'll get to offer a 6-hour course at the conference. That seems like a long time, doesn't it, Stacy?
It really does. Tell us a little bit about what that format is going to be.
Absolutely. So we're going to use Extended DISC, and Extended DISC is a self-assessment behavioral tool. So this isn't going to measure personality. This is going to measure behavior. And there's a lot of science behind this that really helps us understand our own behavioral tendencies. Once we understand those, we begin to recognize behavioral tendencies in other people. Suddenly, the people who we just thought were weird or difficult or challenging, we suddenly have tools and language to recognize their behavioral tendency. And not only that, to have some options on what we can do to communicate with them more effectively. So in the workshop, the first day will be 4 hours of learning about our own behavioral tendencies and being able to recognize those tendencies in others. And then the second day, it will be 2 hours of really understanding how, based on our DISC tendencies, how do we embrace the change process and how do we lead others through the change process in the midst of an ever-changing world. So it's basically learning and gaining new tools about yourself, being able to use them as you interact with others, and actually being able to help guide people through the change process, which, that's a tricky thing. It's very useful. And this works not only at work, but also at home. So there's some added bonuses in roles in community and the people we live with and the people we're friends with and in the people we work with. 6 hours seems like a long time, but you're not just getting a little sampler or an appetizer. You're going to be equipped to have some new skills you can put into practice immediately.
We always say at our office after we teach people DISC or as we learn DISC, you must use your powers for good.
Yeah.
Because really, it really does help people communicate and understand in a way that you can get them to do what you want them to do or what you want the desired outcome to be, but you can only use your powers for good.
Stacey, I'm so glad you said that, because what I love about DISC is how we can use it to more effectively connect with the people around us. It teaches us to treat people not as problems, but to recognize that problems arise because we approach things differently. We approach things differently because of our behavioral tendencies. The things we are most passionate about, you see those behavioral tendencies activated highest, and we fall out with each other over the things we're most passionate about. DISC gives us the tools to recognize that that other person isn't a problem, but that the way we're approaching the problem is different. And with these tools, we can get on the same side so that we can achieve an outcome together. And what I love when we work with different organizations is HR leaders tell me, hey, you know what? My job became so much easier because people realized they had the tools to not only solve problems together, but to actually be successful and achieve more in the organization. It makes the whole culture healthier. So, it takes a lot for an organization to say, we care enough about this to give you 6 hours to learn this. But the benefits are huge. And motive is important too, Stacey. I must admit that there have been times over the past 10 years where I have realized I have some highly motivated real estate agents in the class, and they're trying to boost their sales. And I feel a little bit like, ooh, ouch. Yes, it does help with that, but let's not be the motive of just realizing these new things about people and using them to increase our own wealth and advantage. Let's actually use these to connect with others. But the reason your sales do go up when you have these skills is because all of a sudden you're recognizing things, you're listening, you're engaging, and you're communicating more effectively. So yes, increased sales are a byproduct of this. But if that is your motive for doing it, just don't tell me that when you first see me.
Well, and I think just like you were speaking about Mr. Chapman and your company and the training course that you developed, our members are so much that same way. They want to really instill great values and take care of their employees and those around them. And so I am very confident that they will use their powers for good.
I am too.
And now a public service announcement from our sponsor, May Create Design. Google Translate doesn't work for web designer to paving company translations. You say hot mix and it thinks you're talking about the latest snack craze. Wouldn't it be nice to work with a designer who knows the difference between binders and bitumen? Work with folks who have been speaking your language for the past 17 years. Visit maycreate.com. That's MAYE create.com. Because if you think your website sucks, so does everyone else.
So let's take a little bit of a dive into DISC. First of all, tell me what DISC stands for. So what is DISC, or what do those letters mean?
Well, the DISC, there are 4 letters there, and they help us realize that there are 4 behavioral tendency categories that we fall into. 95% of us have more than one of those. So maybe we have 2 of the 4 or 3 of the 4. No one has 4 of the 4. It just doesn't work quite like that. We can all operate with all those behavioral tendencies, but it takes more energy for us to operate with the ones we have less of. So DISC. The D stands for direct. The I stands for influencer. The S stands for steadiness. And the C stands for conscientiousness. The D and the C focus on task first and then people. The I and the S focus on people first and then task. So for example, let's say you know that your teammate is a high D or C tendency. You might approach them and say, hey, my report is done. Here are all the details. I've exceeded the deadline. And by the way, how are you? Whereas if someone is a high IS tendency and their natural inclination is to focus on people first, you might go to them and say, hey, how are you? How was your weekend? How's your family? And by the way, here's my report, met on time, all the deadlines are there. We all care about tasks, we all care about people, but we're wired a little bit differently. One is not better than the other, but when we understand, we can communicate more effectively.
Sure, I'm very much that way. So I personally am a DC. I know that many people around me can understand that. So I'm very task oriented. And when I go to write an email, I always put all the detail or like the gist of it in first. And then I have to go back and be oh, it's great to hear from you. Thank you for contacting me. I hope you have a great weekend. I would just have to go back and put those things in because they're super important for most people. But for me, that is like you said, the secondary portion of what I do.
Yes.
So tell me, go ahead.
No, as an IS, I'm the opposite. I'll do a whole paragraph, of the weather outside and how I'm feeling and all that. And, oh yeah, by the way, I'm emailing you because So it's very interesting. That's a great way to look at it.
And it's brilliant that you two have those opposite tendencies, with Stacy being a DC and Rick being an IS. The brilliant thing is when we recognize the strengths that the different tendencies bring to the table, and we leverage our differences as opposed to letting them annoy us, it makes a huge difference. So the strength of a D is they drive change and they adhere to time management. The I builds team, builds connection. The S provides a steady space, and they're very good at ensuring the work gets done and the team is included. The C focuses on the details. They're very conscientious, and they make sure things don't get dropped, right? So we need all of those tendencies to be able to achieve our outcomes. And when we recognize that, it works really differently. And so, yes, what else can I tell you to help you prepare for this opportunity?
Well, just to comment on what you said, Rick and I obviously do have opposite communication profiles, and together sometimes we think we can conquer the world, like we really do.
Once a week, we have a conversation about how we're going to take over the world someday.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, and you briefly touched on this a couple of times, but why is it so important, especially when we're managing employees and managing workplace relationships, to communicate in the tendencies or to keep in mind the tendencies of others that we're communicating with?
Well, particularly in our leadership, we tend to, if we're not careful, use a bias that expects people to see the world the way we do. And when we have that perspective, we miss an opportunity to actually see the world through their lens and to meet their needs. So, a lot of us grew up with the golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated. We encourage you, once you understand DISC tendencies, to operate with the platinum rule, which is to treat others the way they need to be treated, because our needs are different, right? We all share a need for, the basic human needs and the connection and all of that, but the way we address those needs differs. And so I kind of think when we get our DISC reports, we learn more about ourselves, we get this fresh pair of glasses to see the world a little bit differently, where we recognize things about ourselves and we recognize things about others. And that can certainly help us in our connections in leadership and in relationships.
I love the platinum rule. I think I need to start using that with my kiddos. So tell us a little bit about what members can expect to understand and utilize after the training in February.
Absolutely. So if they are one of the lucky 50 people who get to enroll in this course, and it's first come, first serve, they will be asked to take 15 minutes and do their DISC assessment immediately. When they complete that, it will be sent to us, not to them. So, they shouldn't be worried like, oh, it didn't come back yet. But when they get to the course, the first thing we'll do is we will give them their DISC report, and we will walk them through to help them understand their unique behavioral tendencies. We'll then help them to understand what are their natural strengths and what are the limitations. The limitations, they're no bad disc tendencies, but when we overuse our strengths, and because it doesn't take a lot of energy for us to operate in our strengths, we may not realize that sometimes when we overuse them, we're pushing people away from us rather than drawing them to us. So we have an opportunity to look at our strengths and limitations of our tendency and to gain some self-awareness there. After we do that, we'll then look outside, look around the room, and begin to identify the primary behavioral tendencies in others. Once we can recognize that, we'll then practice style flexing. And that's where that platinum rule really comes in, to treat others the way they need to be treated. And by the end of that first day, in those 4 hours, we will have those tools to improve communication. That's a lot right there. But you've arranged for a bonus as well, which is that next day we'll come together, take all that disc tendency and explore the predictable stages that people go through when they're confronted with change. And then we'll gain some tools to help lead people through the change process.
Sure, I'm so excited for our members and their employees to go through this. I can't tell you how incredibly helpful in managing my team DISC has been. You know, like I have an employee who is an incredibly high C. And I know going into that conversation where I'm a D, I'm not a super detail-oriented person, but I need to give her as many details as I can and make sure that she feels comfortable in the task before we really get started on it. And knowing that her DISC profile is a high C and mine is a high D, I really have to make sure that I adapt really to her communication style, just to make sure that our team has that sense of balance and peace. So as Shara said, this event is February 22nd and 23rd. To get signed up for this portion of the event, there is a deadline. I know that we are all guilty of signing up for a conference on the day that it starts, but we're not going to do that in this instance, because to sign up for the DISC portion of the professional development track at spring training, you have to have signed up no later than February 13th. And you have to have taken that 10 to 15 minute questionnaire by February 15th. And it is capped for the first 50 people that sign up. So please, please, please go ahead and get your teams on board and get signed up for that at moasphalt.org. Shara, are there any parting thoughts you want to leave us with?
We are so excited to have the privilege to work with your organization. You're kind of pioneering something here, because this is the first conference where we've come into and been able to share. Normally we do this as part of a 3-day class, and you have very cleverly found a way to bring it to your very busy people in a way where they can actually do it with their peers. I'm excited not only about the differences in the individual lives, but within your teams, within your organization. I think you're really setting yourself up for success, and we are so grateful to get to share in this space with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shara. Will you tell us and tell our listeners how to find you or how to contact you if they need you for maybe their conference or another event?
Thank you so much. We're the Chapman Foundation for Caring Communities, and you can look us up online and visit our website. We have e-news that come out every 2 weeks. We have leadership roundtables that happen once a month that are geared for leaders, for committed relationships, and for parenting. So you can choose whatever lens you want to use there. And we also offer the 3-day class experience in Missouri, Illinois, South Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Colorado. So if you are interested in working with us, the Chapman Foundation for Caring Communities, and we are delighted to be part of the MAPA Spring Conference.
Thanks so much, Shara. It was so great to speak with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy and Shara, for joining us today. I really appreciate the insight into DISC training, and I'm really excited for what you guys are going to bring to the Black to Basics spring training in February. And thanks for listening to Asphalt Talk, the podcast by and for asphalt professionals. If you enjoy listening and think you or your staff could benefit from this DISC training, visit the MAPA website to get registered. Don't forget to leave us a review. Your review will help us connect with other professionals like yourself so we can keep this conversation going.
1992 called, they want their website back. Stop apologizing for your crappy site and stop working with that company who thinks hot mix is the latest snack craze. Work with folks who have been speaking your language for the past 17 years. And get a website that's not a gigantic pain in the you-know-what to build. Visit mayecreate.com, that's M-A-Y-E create.com for a free consultation and quote. Because if you think your website sucks, so does everyone else.